Welcome to the Software People Stories. I'm Shiv.
I'm Chitra.
And I'm Gayatri.
We bring you interesting, untold stories of people
Associated with the creation
Or consumption of software-based solutions.
You'll hear stories of what worked,
and sometimes what didn't,
you will also hear very personal experiences.
and insights that would trigger your thoughts
And inspire you to do even greater things.
Today, I'm in conversation with Ben Johnson, the CEO of Particle 41, a company that provides fractional CTO services, software development, data science, data engineering, and AI solutions. Some of the highlights from the conversation are how he started programming on the Commodore 64 and starting a travel company and getting hands-on experience with building and managing IT infrastructure. He also shares his experience of working in different business domains and the importance of being adaptable and embracing new technologies. The value of listening to customers and understanding their needs, and the need to balance technology adoption with practical business considerations. The importance of building strong relationships and networks, and the role of personality traits in successful partnerships. He goes on to talk about the importance of building a strong team culture and focusing on employee engagement. And, of course, the need for quality assurance and DevOps practices in software development. Listen on. Hi, Ben. Welcome to the Software People Stories.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Like we always do, we'll start with a self-introduction. So if you can talk about how you got associated with IT and what has been your career trajectory, we will take it from there.
Sure. I mean, started messing with computers very young. I had a Commodore 64 and enjoyed messing about with that. But out of college, I started a travel company before really there was anything cloud or really even too many modern frameworks. We built a travel technology company, a brand around it called One Travel, about 4 or 5 other brands associated with the platform, and grew that to 70 million in travel. But we had to rack and stack our own hardware. We really were trying to figure out how the internet worked. And we did all of this from a small town in Texas. And then eventually moved the data center to Dallas. But it was very much a garage style operation. And just, the great thing about that is you become a generalist through these pressure situations, and you learn a little bit about every part of the IT stack. Then I started a travel technology company called Travel Ad Network. Where we were really figuring out how the internet makes money, how advertising works, and how to target people based on the content that they read. And so we had to be an early adopter of the cloud, data science technology as it became available. I think I was using Hadoop the first day it was released as open source. And then, so really that intersection between cloud and data and software, we had to be early adopters of. So we did Travel Ad Network. And then I did a company called Investing Channel, which was a vertical ad network around finance. And then started a CTO journey, helped several companies do digital transformations until I landed in one as a co-founder called Legal Inc. Legal Inc. I started in 2015, and by 2018, I sold it to LegalZoom. And that was really a platform for taking care of all these filings and paperworks. Really an opportunity to do robotic process automation and just expand my ability to automate what folks thought was unautomatable. And just really leverage microservice architecture to the fullest and do it really rapidly so that it was an acquisition target for the market leader. And then lately, though, for the past many years, I have really been focused on taking all that I've learned and really helping others. So right now, I am the CEO of Particle 41, which is a service-based company that focuses on fractional CTO, software development, data science, data engineering. We're also doing some AI work in that, and then of course cloud engineering or DevOps. And we've really specialized on all four of those things and have a robust team of about 125 engineers.
Oh, that's very impressive. You covered
Oh,
a
thank
lot
you.
of technology as well as a lot of domains. So the first question that comes to my mind is how do you, one, on the technology side, keep pace with what is happening? When you said you started using Hadoop the day it was released on open source, etc., when probably a lot of unknowns would be there. And two, when you move from one domain to another, how do you either identify the opportunities or how do you understand and solve the problems there?
Sure. So I, in my career, have had the opportunity to identify things that lower the cost of giving the service, but also increase. So, like one example was when we moved from the homegrown data center in a small town in Texas, Odessa, Texas. We had built the whole company inside of the travel agency was a storefront building in downtown, the downtown of the small town. So people would show up there and go in and order the travel. They'd sit with the travel agent and order their trip and get all their tickets. And so it just so happened that the owner had some available real estate in the building next door. And so we had a brick data center with a diesel generator outside, and we brought in all the necessary internet. But as that matured, as the business matured, and we started to look at the cost of bringing internet into a small town and the telecom cost, and then we started talking to a data center in Dallas, we realized that we could lower our costs but upgrade our level of service. We could reduce our headaches, but at a lower cost. And so there's oftentimes these no-brainer decisions, and even Hadoop represented one of those no-brainer decisions. Like, what do you mean we can process all this data in less time, get the answers faster, use less resources? And for us, cloud was very much the same way. Do we want to go talk to our board and our investors about $100,000 hardware purchase, or do we want to just start leasing it in small quantities, exactly what we need when we need it on demand in the cloud? And so much of it is just being opportunistic. There's no secret answer, but also listening, as you mentioned, moving from domain to domain. The one constant in all domains is the customer. And so really listening to what the customer wants and not assuming that they need the perfect system, and just making very stage appropriate decisions. How can I deliver this customer's need in the simplest possible way? With urgency has been a guiding principle for me.
It probably sounds easy, but how do you listen to customers? Is that a trait that one is born with, or is that something that one could get trained
on? I think there is somewhat of a listening to a problem and mapping it to a solution, but just doing it without a bias to say that, oh, well, what the user's really asking for is for me to use this brand new technology that I'm super interested in. I've seen a lot of teams do that, and that generally ends up in a bad place. It's no, the user just wants you to solve their problem. They don't necessarily care that you use the latest technology. I find a lot of technologists are trying to build the perfect system, and the user is just asking for a small problem to be solved. So I think that's essential, not to introduce our own bias and and chase the new shiny objects in technology independently of something that the customer would appreciate.
Mm. Yeah, at the same time, you also mentioned about digesting or building on some of the new and emerging technologies, whether it has moved to the cloud or Hadoop or other things that you are providing your customers right now. How do you stay in touch with what's going on, both to understand the capabilities and the limitations?
Well, there have been there is some early adoption pain too that I'm probably not exposing. I think we were very excited about like Angular JS back in the day. We're very excited about it, so we were kind of early adopting of Angular, and then we had to ride the upgrade curve as the versions of Angular transitioned. There was a lot of backwards breaking changes, and this was costly to go back and do full, code upgrades. Really have to go touch all the written code and upgrade it to stay on that curve, right? To stay in the latest, greatest. So it's not always. It hasn't always. I haven't always made perfect choices. But the goal was, hey, I want to have a separate application for my front end. I don't want to have any assumptions in there. I want to make sure that I'm leveraging microservice architecture. So there has been some architectural principles that as I saw the new emerging technology, it was like, ooh, that is worth trying. That's worth knowing more about. You don't hear about Hadoop anymore. There's other things that do what that was promising, but you're just in the problem set where that if that worked, that would be enough of a game changer. So I'm going to on the adoption bandwagon. I'm going to try to adopt it, and I'm going to figure it out. As far as just like having an ear open to the different tech trends. I mean, most of my teammates are on TechCrunch, are in the communities, and we're participating actively in the DevOps community and the software development community. Right now, especially around Next and Nest.js, we're super excited about those frameworks. But we still know what we're looking for. Like, the front end frameworks are not perfect yet, and we know what we're looking for. We know when we see a methodology that would make our lives simpler, and we want to participate in the communities that help us.
Yeah. So before I get on to how you build the team, this transition from being, say, a technical person or as a consultant to a co-founder, how was that for you?
It's great. I find it very similar in a way, like in software development, it was all about frameworks, right? As we were figuring out how to write, like my first app out of college was a Java application. And the frameworks there wasn't much of a framework. People were trying to kind of roll their own. But as we've seen more and more frameworks come out, things have gotten easier. Somewhat reduces choice. So it takes some of the choices, but it gives you structure. And I think business is very much the same. There are frameworks in business. There's goal setting frameworks. There's, pick your flavor. There's EOS. There's OKR goal setting. There's all kinds of things. And I just really enjoy studying those methodologies and then having the opportunity to apply them. If you're data driven, business is the most fun. The most fun game you'll ever play because there's a scoreboard that is real, and your customers will let you know when they're happy, when they're not happy. I mean, it's just you're getting feedback all the time. But I think breaking it down into the methodology and the framework is super exciting to me.
What about the other aspects, such as you need to keep track of accounts, there are legal compliances?
I think that's, delegation is a super important thing when it's outside of your wheelhouse. I have some great legal friends The types of lawyers that I love to work with, the types of accountants that I love to work with are the ones that can explain things to me in a practical way.
Okay.
And not so much the academic way. So,
Mhm.
hey, this is why you need to do this. This is the best practice.
Mm.
And they're willing to kind of teach me a framework or two along the way. That's what I enjoy. But yeah, you got to cover all your bases, and there's always people to help you with that. Like asking for help should not be an issue for a good founder.
Yeah. So then two aspects. One is when you have friends who can help you. How do you build this network? I assume that this is something that you've built over time. And
Yeah. Well, as you building businesses, keeping in touch with people is really great. Keeping in touch, like a lot of the people that lead my practice areas, my CTO that leads my software development, he was with me on that first travel company. We've known each other for 20 years. He's an Indian national, Sukhdev Gidwani. He's a great guy. We've been in partnership with each other through many, many ventures. And so building those strong core friendships, the leader of my cloud engineering practice, Chris Fromm, he and I worked together at that first travel company.
wow.
So really keeping in touch with people and building solid relationships is key. And people will come in and out of my life. If there was a super good bookkeeper at one company, hey, if I need a bookkeeper, I'm going to call them first. Hey, are you free? Would you want to do some work with me, even on a part-time basis? Would you want to advise me? The other thing I really love are mastermind groups. So I'm part of two different mastermind groups. One is for owners of service companies called Collective 54. It's a great one. The other one that I'm in is more for me personally. It's called Rise Up Kings, and it's faith-based, and it's business owners who are really into faith, fitness, finance, and family. And I get a lot of personal development from that mastermind group. Okay. And so asking within those mastermind groups, hey, do you know a good lawyer I should talk to? Do you know a good bookkeeper, good accountant, or CPA? They'll give you plenty of advice. And most of the time they're sharing their experience. They're just saying, well, I use this person and it worked for me. So just, asking people and those mastermind groups are clutch.
What about the chemistry with the co-founders? You said your legal startup, you are a co-founder.
So what I find interesting is looking at the lens from a personality framework. So there's one that's very common. It's called DISC, DISC.
Yeah.
And you'll take a DISC assessment and you'll find out your letters. And so I find that I'm an S. I'm an S with a lot of C. So I'm a strong S with a little bit of C. So I'm generally speaking, even though I'm a dynamic leader, most CEOs though are DI. They're the D, which I always kind of think stands for direct and influential. And so I partner really well with DIs. And I know that about myself. So when I'm looking for a co-founder, I know they're going to be a DI. I know that means they're going to be super direct. And then I look for how influential they are. So how much do they know their industry? How robust is their network within that industry? And how good of a salesperson are they? Because that's who I like to partner with. And so knowing yourself, knowing who you are, knowing your personality traits, and then knowing, especially if you're going to go in on a startup or a venture, a business with somebody, knowing your coworkers' personality traits is a good way to make a sound decision. But yeah, I just partner super well with DIs, people who are straight to the point, know what they want, have a good vision. And if you're a man on a mission, I tend to do really well as a running back, plow through in execution, behind, somebody who's calling good plays.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, is this approach something that you found scalable to build your 150-person team?
So we do personality testing, so you can make that scalable. Um, and really to build that team, we've done a couple of things. So personality testing is a good thing.
Mhm,
We've also done some skills-based testing. So we
mhm,
use some tools to just say, hey, do you know your stuff, and get a score on their skills. This cuts down on the amount of technical interviewing we need to do.
mm,
Um, so we use a tool called CoderByte, which
mhm,
gives us some measurement of like, hey, do they know their stuff in what we're going to have them do mostly. Personality testing is great. We have a lightweight disc assessment. Um, but then I also find after the interview process and we say, hey, we want you to come work with us, then we need employee feedback. We need feedback from the folks that are working around them. So,
mhm,
like their team lead. And we also need to know feedback from them on how they're doing.
mhm.
I find if they're doing good in the first 90 days, then they're going to be doing good for a while.
Okay.
Usually the most discovery happens in that first 30 days. And so, yeah, we're big on the employee engagement.
Mhm,
We also do this thing called squads. So,
mm,
our software development organization is the largest group within our
mhm,
company. And so, any way that we would try to do people management, we'd end up throwing a lot of costs, right, to manage people. And people don't
mhm,
really, in software development, the agile process is what manages you, right? People are
mhm,
self-managed in agile. But we still need a way of caring and caring and being concerned for the person.
mhm,
And we want folks to be T-shaped, so not just
mhm,
technically
mhm,
skilled, but also have soft skills, good
mhm,
communication, good project management. And so we want folks to be well-rounded. And so we've launched a program called Squads. And
mhm,
Squads is a small group that gets together for 90 minutes one time a month. And then we've developed curriculum for the squad leaders to work through with their squad.
mhm,
And so this is how we build culture. It's separate from my team where I'm
mhm,
executing and I'm doing my sprints and all of that.
mhm,
It's separate from that. It's a time for me to take a pause. I take 90 minutes once a month. I meet with my squad. We discuss each other's, pains, worries, fears, all of
mhm,
that. And then we receive feedback. We talk about what it means to be a well-rounded professional, and so there's a whole set of kind of exercises that we do in our squad setup to really cultivate the person, not just the professional.
okay. So, how large did you say the squad is?
A squad is less than 10 right now.
Okay.
Most of our squads are about 8 people.
Yeah, that's really interesting in terms of both getting them to own some of the cultural aspects and then spread it further. Uh, when it comes to technical aspects, you talked about the quality and obsession with the customer and all that. How do you, as a service provider, kind of ensure that the entire team is focused on delivering quality?
Yeah, no, I mean, no crazy secret there. We have a
Mhm,
code review panel, um, and we have an architectural review board. We call it our architectural review team, or ART.
mhm,
And so you need to do, when you're launching a project, you need to do your ART, submit it to the ART team, and get it reviewed. And we have project managers that are built into every team that are making sure that the process is being adhered to. So probably no great revelation other than, hey, we have to work the problem and we have
mhm,
to have QA engineers involved in the process.
mhm.
And yeah, we have to have a high degree of collaboration with the client and with the team to make sure that we're delivering the expected outcomes.
You also mentioned that among the services that you do, you also support the DevOps type of work, right? So how do the teams get an appreciation for what happens in production, particularly in the light of the recent CrowdStrike?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So how cavalier were they, right? To allow people to write code inside of the kernel, right? Essentially writing code inside the kernel. So I think we're doing pretty good, but we could always improve. So our DevOps group, even our internal teams will request architecture and work and infrastructure from the DevOps group.
Okay.
So we deliver DevOps as a service essentially, and teams may say, "Hey, I'm just starting a project. I need to launch the infrastructure." So they're submitting architecture to this group, and our cloud engineers are kind of pooled. I think one really key thing is at some point developers cannot have access to the AWS console in production anymore.
Okay.
Like at some point you have to cross the bridge. You have to say if it's not infrastructure as code, then it can't be deployed. So you need to provide that guardrail at some point. And that's really to the client's benefit so that the promise of DevOps can be realized. Sometimes in a hurry, we've kind of let the developers have equal access to the infrastructure, and then we end up with drift. So the infrastructure as code isn't really everything, and you can't tear down and recreate. But also, I think there's an acknowledgement of like some clients, their DevOps maturity is lower. They just want CI/CD. They just want a good deployment process. And we're more than happy to help them, like just make sure that deployment goes away and deployment is really repeatable. Some of them just aren't quite at the stage in their company where they can have robust infrastructure pipelines and code pipelines. So I think we also have this discussion of like, what are we really shooting for here, and what level of maturity is our goal, and then just work progressively to get that level of DevOps maturity to increase over time.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you handhold them so that they are comfortable running on their own. Extending that a little bit, do you also get involved in helping their users adopt? Because even if you roll out a new solution, the success is ultimately about the users actually coming to rely on it.
So in your question, this is the users being the clients, developers, or what have you?
Well, going one step beyond, I mean, do you work only with the developers and the tech teams? Or let's say they're rolling out a new, either an e-commerce application or probably for the lawyers. How do you make sure that they like it and they would start using it? It's going to be a big change for them sometimes. I asked him about the importance of user adoption for successful technology implementation. The answer to that question and a lot more in the next part of our conversation in the next episode. Don't miss it.
We thank Siddharth for the music and Anita for promoting the Software People Stories.
If you like this episode,
Please subscribe on your favorite podcast client.
And spread the word in your network.
if you'd like to share your story,
Contact us at podcasts@pm-powerconsulting.com.